I want to talk about the US so-called diplomatic boycott of the 2022 Winter Olympics being held in Beijing next month, February 2022. I want to talk about how even at face value, the US is telling the world that they don't take their own claims against China of genocide seriously. And even their own boycott, they have not taken seriously. They are going to send almost 60 diplomats to the Beijing Olympics. Olympics they claim they're diplomatically boycotting. So how serious do you think the belief is in Washington that China's actually carrying out genocide, or that anyone going into China is in danger? Think about that right at face value. But I saw this article here and I thought at first it had to be fake news. Why would the US so blatantly sabotage its own PR stunt? But they did. This is from the South China Morning Post. U.S. applies to China for 18 officials to attend Winter Olympics after Joe Biden declares diplomatic boycott. And I love this one right here. Chinese and American governments have very different definitions of a diplomatic boycott, says source. And, you know, the thing is, the American government has multiple definitions for what a diplomatic boycott entails, and they use the one that suits them that day. Because if you go down further in this article, it says here, the U.S. indicated to Chinese officials it might submit applications for 40 more officials in the coming months. And this is an article from December. And so how serious is your belief that genocide is taking place right now in China if you're sending your athletes, and even after announcing a diplomatic boycott, you're still sending like 60 diplomats to the games? How serious could your belief be that genocide is taking place? Now, let me explain to you what the US actually did here. They know there's no genocide taking place in Xinjiang, China, the western region of China. They know the Chinese government is not trying to obliterate the Uyghur people. The US government knows that the US itself was behind the wave of terrorism that prompted security measures to be enacted in Xinjiang. And they know that what China is doing is actually uprooting extremism, not exterminating a group of people. And they know that the vast majority of the people in Xinjiang are benefiting from these security measures, and they're only upset because their goal of dividing and destroying China by backing armed separatism in Xinjiang, in Tibet, in Hong Kong, in Taiwan, all of this is falling apart. So this is where these lies come out. They created the security crisis, China reacted, and then they're taking the reaction by Beijing and twisting it to make it look like something it is not. If the United States government actually believed China was carrying out genocide against 1 million or more people within its borders, they would not send their athletes. They would not send their athletes, they would not be trading with China, and they surely wouldn't be sending nearly 60 diplomats to Beijing. So what is this actually? This is the absolute maximum the US could do without triggering some sort of backlash. Because imagine if they said, no, US athletes are not going to the Beijing 2022 Winter Olympics. That's not happening. Enough people who are generally apolitical would step back and say, well, this is serious. Let's do some digging. Let's ask some questions. That is a serious step to take. And these athletes, they have trained their whole life for this opportunity, and now they can't do it. Why? They're going to want to know why. And they're going to demand answers and evidence from the US government that the US government does not have. So the maximum they could do was this fake diplomatic boycott that the US itself is not even observing, to smear and undermine China on the global stage without actually ever having to put up the evidence that there's some sort of genocide taking place, because there is no evidence and they could never do that. Now, one other thing I want to point out, because I also came across articles like this. This is from last year. How much does the diplomatic boycott of Beijing 2022 matter? This is from the BBC, British state media, and they're accusing China of these atrocities. They're calling them re-education detention camps, and they're saying there was this tennis player Peng Shuai who was sexually assaulted. All of this is all lies, and they're claiming that she disappeared, which she didn't. She didn't disappear from anywhere. She was posting, she was appearing at events, and this was just the Western media. No matter what China did, just spinning it and, moving the goalposts so that no matter what China did, it was still wrong. And this is the BBC, this entire article trying to demonize China when who in reality is actually carrying out the worst human rights abuses this century, the 21st century. The United States and also the UK, and with the help of countries like Canada and Australia. Think about the 2003 invasion of Iraq. That was probably the worst crime against humanity so far of the 21st century. Even what they're accusing China of without any evidence at all pales in comparison to what the US and UK did to Iraq. And this is something they're still doing to Iraq. US troops still haven't left Iraq. They're still there in Iraq right now. This is the problem. This is the problem with this Uyghur genocide story. It is another WMD lie. It is the WMD lie for China. This is what the US is doing. And they're not doing it because they care about human rights. They're doing it to pave the way for another round of extreme human rights abuses. Their sanctions on Xinjiang right now are going to hurt the economy in Xinjiang and penalize, collectively punish the people of Xinjiang, the people the US claims it's trying to help. And this is all leading toward a much more serious confrontation between the US and China. The US is not going to allow China to surpass it without a fight. And so this is part of building up a consensus of sorts to wage war against China, a limited conventional war with China. This notion of China carrying out genocide is sticking in people's brains. And that's another thing this diplomatic boycott is telling the world. Number one, it's saying we don't take our own claims of genocide seriously because we're still sending our athletes. And even though we announced the diplomatic boycott, we're still even sending diplomats. So we don't take our own claims of genocide seriously at all. The other thing that it's telling the world is that they think the general public are stupid, that they could announce this boycott and accuse China of genocide, and then they themselves not even observe their own boycott, and people will still have it stuck in their mind that China is actually carrying out genocide, as if these countries would actually send their athletes in the first place if they thought that was really going on. So people need to be very careful about this. And when you're talking to people who have it stuck in their mind that China is evil, just ask them if they honestly believe the US government would allow US athletes to go to a country and compete in a sporting event if the US government truly believed there was actual genocide going on or that any of their athletes were actually at risk. And of course, the answer is no, they wouldn't. And ask these people who have it stuck in their mind that China is a threat, what China has done that is worse than lying about weapons of mass destruction, invading a country and killing 1 million people, because we have the British media, The Guardian, this was 2010, they're admitting that they completely lied. Very deliberately, they lied about Saddam Hussein and his weapons of mass destruction, which did not exist. They knew they didn't exist, and they knew the time frame for Iraq ever standing up another arsenal of chemical or biological weapons was so far in the distant future that it was irrelevant. It, for all intents and purposes, was impossible. And yet they lied to the public so that they could go into Iraq and actually carry out crimes against humanity. And they're doing the exact same thing to China right now. And then there's this from the LA Times. Poll, civilian toll in Iraq may top 1 million. This was in 2007, and so many more people have died in Iraq since then as a direct result of the US invasion, occupation, and then constant manipulation of the internal political affairs of Iraq and the US and its military activity inside Iraq. And this was a British polling agency that sorted this out and determined that by 2007 already more than 1 million Iraqis were dead because of deliberate lies told by the US and its partners, the UK, and their collective war of aggression against Iraq. And so these are the same people now telling us about Xinjiang, genocide, and their diplomatic boycott of the games that they're not even going to observe themselves. Just keep all of this in mind. This is not going to stop. I have said it once, I will say it again and again. The US is not going to let China surpass it and the rest of the West without a fight. It's going to happen. And the US is going to do everything imaginable to stop it. And I don't think people should underestimate just how far the US will go. Think about how unprecedented it is for a non-white nation to surpass the West entirely. Just think about that. And think about the chain reaction as China is rising, how all of these other countries the West has subordinated for generations, how they are also rising with China, and how unacceptable this is in the minds of the people ruling in Washington and in London and from Wall Street and from Brussels, how unacceptable this is and what they will do to stop it. And think about their narrative, how lazy they are to even construct a convincing narrative. So we're in very dangerous times. People can see that the West is in decline, but a cornered animal is at its most dangerous. So we'll keep an eye on this all throughout the rest of this year. If you thought this video was useful, please like and share it. Think about subscribing. It's free to do, and it helps the channel grow. I have a website, newatlas.report. You can find and follow all of my work there. And even if I'm kicked off of YouTube, if you've bookmarked it and you've shared it with others, I can embed videos from other video sharing platforms on newatlas.report. I'm also on Twitter for the time being, at Brian_Berletic. I'm on Weibo, which is Chinese social media. I'm trying to diversify. The links for all of this will be in the video description below, along with all of the links I referenced in this video. And you will also find ways of supporting my work in the video description below. And to everyone who has been, whether it's through Patreon month to month, or through one-time donations, or even if you're just helping share my work with other people, I could not do this work without that support. So I want to thank everyone for that support. And as always, thank you for watching.